Welcome to the Excel Pod. Welcome to the Untied Podcast, where we unravel the knots of life with faith, wisdom, and encouragement, because together we're here to untie from tradition and embrace truth through powerful Bible teaching. My name is Garrett Bernithi. I'm one of the hosts of the show, along with my very good friend Corey Sawyers, and today we are bringing you another episode of the Untied Podcast, where we are going to be looking at Psalm 18. And I'm excited to look at this psalm, which correlates to 2 Samuel 22. So if you're tuning in or watching this, whatever way that you're joining us, you can open your Bibles if you have one open or able to. I know sometimes I listen to a lot of podcasts in the car. So if you're in the car, don't open your Bible. Just tune in and listen, and you can read it later. But we're going to be looking at Psalm 18, and I'm excited to do this with my good buddy Corey. But before we get into all that, we've got a couple things we want to do. First, starting out with what's been cooking. So, Corey, I know you had a big weekend at the Tennessee game. I had a good weekend cooking some beef ribs, but did not have a good time on Saturday. So I'm just erased that from my memory and moving on with my life. But what's been cooking with you, brother?
Focus on the ribs.
Yeah,
just
the
focus
ribs
on
were
the
good.
ribs.
It was good.
Yeah, we had a good time. It was a little bit more interesting at the end of the ball game than it really needed to be. But I'm not a blame the ref kind of guy, but particularly on the same weekend that all the Auburn, Georgia problems went on, the SEC didn't look really good in their refereeing this week.
Yeah.
When you get to the end of the game and like there's one penalty called on the other team and 13 on one team, maybe that's legit, but it didn't always seem to pan out. But anyway, we made it through and had some good we stopped at one of my favorite barbecue places, Martin's Barbecue. About 7 or 8 locations. He actually, Pat Martin, the guy that owns it, hosts a television show called The Life of Fire or something like that.
Yeah.
They're on season 2 right now, talking about different barbecuing and smoking techniques. And he actually, a lot of our listeners may have, when you have gone to the Freed Hardman lectureships, might have driven outside of town looking for some good barbecue, just a little bit outside of Henderson. That's where he learned. So it's West Tennessee style barbecue, and but we eat there and went up 102,000 other people in orange. Well, maybe 101,000, maybe 1,000 were in red, and so. They were calling the hogs, which is what we would always do before we would butcher hogs. So that made good sense. And
yeah.
So they were wanting to say woo pig suey. We say woo in the middle of Rocky Top. So we were saying less suey and more woo, So,
more wooey.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a good weekend.
Well,
this weekend is our big rivalry game, the third Saturday in October. So
yeah.
I may be crying the blues next week myself. I don't know.
Well, I hope it goes better for you than it did us. We just did not play well at all. It was terrible. We have not played like that all year. But in the big rivalry games, you never know what you're going to get. We've always said with Texas, with Oklahoma State, with the other team.
Ole Miss.
Well, yeah, I guess now Old Miss. We'll figure out what that's like. But the other team, and this goes both ways, could be have the worst year ever. They could be and however many whenever you play them, and they will ruin your season. That's how it's always been. And with Texas, it doesn't matter how good or bad either team is. It's you never know what to expect. And Mateer came back. His hand seemed like it felt pretty good, but even he said mentally it just wasn't happening. And we had the opportunity to have several scores, and we threw interceptions instead. But I don't think that that's going to be the case from now on. I think he's a pretty good quarterback, and I got a lot of faith in him. Everybody does. So we'll hopefully we'll recover. But Alabama, Tennessee, all those guys, Georgia, everyone has a game like that every now and then. So hopefully we'll recover.
Well, if y'all had beaten Texas, there's a good chance that your two biggest rivalry both could have lost their coach in the same season.
Yeah. It is amazing how many coaches are getting fired right now.
Yes.
Amazing. Saturday, or maybe it was Sunday morning. I don't remember when it came out, but Penn State's coach is let go, and it's weird the way they're talking. He literally saved that program and brought them back to being elite again, and has a rough start this year, and they're like, no, we're done with you. Which I hate but I think he's going to land in a good spot. I think he's a good coach. But we'll see.
What was it, a $49 million buyout? Maybe he can live off that. I don't know. We'll see.
Urban Meyer was talking about it, and he actually said for the whole thing, right? Because when you let go of a head coach, you generally have all the coaches, whatever. So he said basically they wrote a check for $75 million.
I'll never forget Ed Orgeron talking about whenever they brought him in at LSU, and they said, we're going to have to let you go. We're going to pay you a buyout, and I forget what his buyout was, but like $49 million or $45 million, whatever it was. They're like, and he says, so let me get this straight. You're going to give me $45 million, and I'm going to get to spend the rest of my life on my boat out on the lake with my beautiful wife? And they're like, yes. And he's like, where's the door?
What door do you want me to use?
That's right.
I remember that.
There's worse things.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe he can give some of that money to excel still more. Who knows?
Yeah, we need to reach out to him. Yeah. You want to?
It's tax deductible.
Yeah, it is. It is. Extremely.
He may need a tax deduction.
We'll take it. We'll take a million. We'll take 1% of what you've got. Oh man, yeah. It's college football is absolutely crazy right now. But yeah.
By the way, I'm dealing with allergies. So if I sound funny, that's why. If I suddenly turn my camera off, it's because I'm sneezing or something to that effect. So
you don't want everybody to see what that looks like.
No, I thought that was fixing to happen a few moments ago, and I started looking at lights.
I was waiting to see what's fixing to go on here.
Yeah. So.
Oh man. Well, we've had worse things happen on this show. I'm sure we'll have some more callers into our radio station today. So I'm sure it's bound to happen, but no, it was overall good weekend. Still a little bit depressed over the loss, but it stung a little bit, but I still wore my OU tie on Sunday. I've still got my OU Oklahoma mug there. I'm drinking some water out of, so I'm not jumping off or anything. Just a little upset, but that's life. Yeah. College football helps you deal with life.
Yeah, we're playing. I've said that a long time, that being a Tennessee fan helps you with Christianity because you deal with suffering and you're living on hope. So
that's right. That's right. Well, we're heading down to South Carolina this week, and that's another team that they could not be very good and ruin your season real quick.
Yeah.
Those guys, they're like Texas Tech. They just like that little dog behind you that's keep nipping at your heels. And
South Carolina's one of those teams that loses to 3 teams they shouldn't every year and beats 2 teams they should not.
Yep, that's right. That is right. And we're playing there, so that doesn't help.
So every
our chances.
year it's a combination of, are we going to fire a coach or give him an extension? So
yeah. But the highlight of the weekend was the beef ribs. 9 hours of smoking with some hickory pellets on the old Traeger, using some holy cow. I mean, I went all out, Corey. We smoked beef ribs. I used holy cow seasoning. I'm doing everything I can. Oh, man. You know, I was hoping to put old Bevo on the grill, but he escaped. But they were good. They really were good. They were super tender. I even let them rest. I let them rest for a lot longer than I probably should have, but they rested for about an hour and a half in the cooler. Man, they came out. They were still hot and just...
Well, I don't know where to find elephant ribs at, but I'd smoke some this weekend if I could find some.
Man, they're good. Although I will say my boys, after they like them, but they like pork ribs better.
Oh, yeah.
They do. So, we don't cook beef ribs all that often, but they like the pork ribs better. So that's what we do a majority of the time. But they were good. They were really good. So the weekend was not lost. And then we had a good day Sunday. So,
yeah.
Oh, man. Well, we have a lot to talk about with Psalm 18 today. So we're going to go ahead and move into our next segment, which we have done, but we haven't done, which is Give Me Your Best Books. So we're going to move into that so that we can make sure and have plenty of time to talk about Psalm 18. Corey, do you want to go first?
That'll be fine. I've got 2 books that I've been reading lately. Studying on a sermon series that I've been doing on Sunday morning that's had some facts and figures, and I'll go ahead and give the disclaimer that we usually do. Just because we talk about a book doesn't mean we endorse that writer or everything that he says in that book or other books, but as far as leadership and church growth and kind of the way that people are thinking, especially 2 books by Tom, I don't know if you say his name Rainier or Rayner. I've never heard him or seen him interviewed on TV or online or anything. I've just read a couple of his books, but both of these are about how to reach out to people. Sometimes we think, or you'll hear people say, well, we're a welcoming church. But you talk to someone in the community and they're like, that's the most stuck up, arrogant congregation, whatever.
Yeah.
Because we're welcoming to ourselves. And it's good, I think, sometimes for us to think about seeing, lots of businesses will use blind shopper kind of deal, test shopper, whatever they call them, to go in and see how, well, anyway, these 2 books, the first one is Becoming a Welcoming Church. And it's a very short book. But it's mostly about like the facilities and those kinds of things around the building that you can do. Some of the things that we can make it a little bit more visitor friendly for people. Sometimes, we're bad about saying, this is over at the activities building. Well, if you're new here, you may not know where the activities building is, or you can find out more information on the board outside the office, but they may not know where the office is. So just little things you can do to make the facilities and whatnot a little bit more visitor guest friendly. And then the second one is also from him. It's called Surprising Insights from the Unchurched. Surprising Insights from the Unchurched. And then the subtitle there is Proven Ways to Reach Them. And lots of graphs and figures, because it's all based on some surveys and that type of thing to, again, help you to understand what people that maybe the largest religious segment that we have in our society today is the unchurched. And but there's a section on this about those who were formerly unchurched and what they're doing, and leaders of congregations, churches that are reaching the unchurched, and again, just a lot of data there for you to consume. But I think it's very insightful in helping us to realize how we can meet people where they are. Sometimes we use, churchy kind of jargon and that type of thing that makes it a little bit more difficult, or we talk about issues and things that maybe we like to talk about but aren't necessarily where people are at or what they're struggling with. And both of those books, I think, are insightful, at least on some of those concepts.
Well, good. Well, we will, of course, we shared them on here, and so those who are watching will be able to check those out. But both of those can be found on Amazon, and we will put the links down there if you would like to look at those and purchase them. For me, I've got a couple here, both I think that are very good. And here's the first one, and there's a couple of reasons that I want to share this. One, I just got it in the mail, and or not in the mail, but my wife just brought it back to me. My wife went down to see her aunt this past weekend, and then went down to see our son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter. And this is, if you've ever heard of David Farr, that is my daughter-in-law's grandpa. And this is a book called Then Came Sunday that was published, I believe, right after he passed away. And I've got to read some of this, and it's very easy read. He's a great writer, and it talks about a lot of things that have to do with what's going to happen later on. Right? Then Came Sunday is the title. He discusses Christ died for our sins. The risen, or the day that Jesus was raised from the dead, when he was taken up, and just a lot of things surrounding the life of Jesus, and discusses kind of our part in that. And so there's a lot of good stuff that I know is in here. Like I said, I've only read just a little bit of this, but it's a book that really is helping all of us to gain some confidence in the teachings of the Bible, to build our faith, and to be able to study more regularly within our Bibles about Christ and his effect on our life. And there's just a number of different things that he discusses here about the gospel in general, and does a great job in doing that. And so I'm looking forward to reading this, but anything that David Farr has written is really good. And so definitely want to recommend that. Looking forward to reading through that one. And the second one here, and let me get it up on the screen for those who are watching, is one that Corey, I don't remember if we have put this one up or not. We always say we need to keep a log of these things, and then we don't do that. But it is one that I have been pretty engulfed in, and you'll see why here in a minute. Get it up here. Due to what I have been studying for our next workshop, and here it is right here. It is a teacher's commentary on Romans, and this is by Dan R. Owen. Dan Owen is a preacher in Kentucky. I'm trying to think of, is it University? His congregation, huh? Okay, Broadway. He's at the Broadway Church of Christ in Kentucky. He does a great job there. He's been there for a long time, 35, maybe more years than that. He's also an instructor at Bear Valley. I've been in several classes with him. he is a great student of the Bible in so many ways. And his commentary on this is just fantastic. He presents a lot of different concepts. And it's labeled a teacher's commentary, and if Dan Owen is anything, he's a teacher, and he has a lot of different things in appendix, in the appendices that he has put together with images, and just does a great job of explaining the text in a way that is very understandable. So definitely want to recommend both of those to anybody who is looking for some good books to read. And so I hope that those will help you and bless you in your journey of faith and growth and all that kind of stuff. So those are our books of the day. And so we always try to do that every couple of weeks. And so glad that we could share those things with you. All right, Corey. Well, that brings us to our main portion of this podcast, or our episode today, which is a look at Psalm 18. And so I'm going to get that up here on the screen so that we can check it out. This is a very interesting psalm. And before we hopped on here, we always just kind of talk about several things. And I said, before you get into, when you're reading in 2 Samuel 22, or you're really reading before that to see why 2 Samuel 22 was said, it's like a theme out of the Lord of the Rings, or a scene out of the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit or something, because of all the different battles that are taking place. And so really cool stuff here. And so Corey, I'm going to let you kind of do the introduction as you typically do for these, and then we will dive in and start breaking down this awesome psalm. I think you're muted there, brother.
How about that?
There you go.
2 Samuel 22 and Psalm 18 are almost identical word for word. There's not a lot of times you see the psalm in the text. There's places we have psalms in historical books or whatever that aren't in the book of Psalms. And there's, as we've talked about already in this season, there's psalms that we can tie to specific points. But there's very few times where you see a psalm in the historical account and then see it again in the book of Psalms, which makes this one really cool in particular. And as you said, if you back up a little bit to Psalm 21, you see this war with the Philistines that has happened, and you've got these descendants of the giants, and he kind of in similar fashion to when David was a young man and faced Goliath. It talks about, how massive they were based on the amount that their spear weighed and all of those kinds of things, and all of these different descriptions of, kind of like the description of Goliath, and even mentions Goliath there in verse 19 of 2 Samuel 21. But anyway, there's this kind of a wrapping up of the life of David then with Psalm 22 and 23. Not only this battle, but in particular, but I think kind of David's approach, and you said this as you look at other Psalms, of how, when we go through the Psalms and we see these lament Psalms of them going, like we talked about last week, through some difficult time, and we see problems, we turn to God then. But how often do we turn to God when there's a victory? And that's what David is doing here. And it is a massive, impressive victory. Even in verse 20 there, this idea that not only is he a really big man, but he got 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. So there's another advantage. I don't know how advantageous that would be to have an extra finger and toe, but anyway, he's got them. So, but David's point, I think, in this psalm is that it's all about God. And Because this is a rather lengthy psalm, we probably don't have time to look at all of it verse by verse, but just kind of some highlights of it. But one of the things that, as far as an introduction to it, that you notice is that the title of Psalm 18, I'm trying to look and see, you're on 2 Samuel 22. If you'll notice verse 1 of 2 Samuel 22, and then you compare that to Psalm 18, you'll notice that the title of Psalm 18 is almost word for word of 2 Samuel 22 and verse 1. It's all about David speaking these words to the Lord when he delivered him from the hands of his enemies and from the hand of Saul. So this is kind of an overarching, not just because of the victory he's just had, although that one was massive, but kind of all of the battles that he had faced. And, the people looked at, let me back up. One of the things that this helps me with is to understand that all of these titles that we have in the Psalms, we don't necessarily think that maybe they are inspired, but this is one of those that helps me to believe that the information we're given in the titles are accurate, because it's the same thing in 2 Samuel 22 and verse 1. But anyway, the people hailed David as this great military man, and he's a great victor, a great soldier, a great leader. They actually made fun of Saul. One of the things that drove his anger towards David is that Saul had killed his thousands and David had killed his tens of thousands. But if you'd asked David, David would have told you all along, it wasn't me. Mm-hmm. It was God. And there's a great lesson in all of that for us, in remembering that, instead of talking about what we did as a congregation or what we did in our ministry, thinking of it as what God did through us and with us. And that's what this psalm is all about, of praising the Lord for that. And we'll talk about more particulars about that. But anyway, that kind of gives a little bit of a background on what's going on here. So
yeah, and that's that's right off the bat how this starts off here. And of course, this right there, verse 1 is of course not in 2 Samuel 22, but is a perfect introduction here. I love you, O Lord, my strength. So one of the things that I did as I was going through kind of looking at this, preparing, is I noticed right off the bat, and I know that you did, and anybody else who begins to, who reads this, there are a few things you're going to notice very, very quickly. And it's going to be this word, I. Let me just put a highlighter on these. The word my, and let me see if I can find the first one. It's also the word me, which that's the first one I'm seeing here. So I'm going to just use that one. So notice what he says right off the bat. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield, the horn of my salvation, and my stronghold. So as I started reading through this, I started in my own Bible highlighting a few things to kind of, I actually did my and me in different colors for myself so I could know the difference. But you'll find that they're all throughout here. I mean, it's amazing how many, we've talked about the relationship between David and God before, but this is another great example of how close that relationship is. And as you said, which is great to point out, that, did he defeat Goliath? Yes. Did he defeat the Philistine? Yes. But it wasn't, he understood that it wasn't just him. It was God who was delivering him, or delivering them, into his hands. And so in his understanding of not only the relationship, but what God is to him and his people, he understands, according to 1, 2, verses 1 and 2, that God is everything. So I wrote down these, and I'm gonna try and there's gonna be a lot of flipping back and forth. So I'm gonna try to do this right here. Let's see. The Lord is first, he says, he's my rock. So let's just highlight that there. Well, we can also find that word if we go down to verse 31. It's not the only time he mentions that. For who is God but the Lord, and who is a rock except our God? So then we can go down to verse 46, and he says, the Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be the God of my salvation. So we'll highlight that again, the same color. If we go back up to the
we sing, which is a verse we sing all the time. The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted.
Yeah. We sing that all the time. Next, he says in verse 2, my fortress. Well, it's almost, Corey, like these are, I don't know, it's really kind of bookend type of words. Like I'm starting out with this and I'm ending with this, because here, my fortress, verse 2, but then we go down to verse, verse 45. I've got these written down here. Foreigners fade away and become trembling out of their fortresses. So God is my fortress, and he's going to stand forever, but your fortress, a little bit different. He says, and I'm just going to start highlighting these, and, deliverer in verse 2, and then we go down to verse 50. He gives great deliverance to his king. I think that was purple. And shows loving kindness to his anointed. Well, that goes back to that Psalm 2 and verse 7, the anointed, who is the son, to David, who is the anointed, and his descendants forever. And I'll just list these off here for those who are listening, so we won't take too much time on these. But let's see, you've got rock, you've got fortress, you've got, here's, of course, rock again. We'll highlight that there. He is a shield. Shield is used in verse 2, verse 30, and verse 35. And then you have, let's see here, salvation. I'm just going to highlight salvation. I think that's
horn of my salvation.
Yeah, and it's actually said in three different ways, which I think is really cool. So let's just highlight that there. So here he says that, of course, my God is the horn of my salvation. But when we go down to verse 35, you have also given me the shield of your salvation. And then we go down to verse 46, the Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be the God of my salvation. So it's almost like he talks about it three different ways to explain. And I'll do one more and then let this go, Corey. Let's see. I can't remember. The word rescued I thought was very interesting, although that's not up here. But in verse 19, he brought me forth also into a broad place, and he rescued me. And then in verse 48, again, he discusses this concept. He says, he delivers me from my enemies. Surely you lift me above those who rise up against me. You rescue me. So
that's actually that's the same word as deliverer in verse 2.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then. I was didn't have a chance to look anymore, so I'm going to change that to here to make those the same. So anyway,
it is at the beginning then.
Yeah. So it's almost like, here's the setting in verse 1 and 2, and then I'm going to talk about all these things throughout the rest of the psalm.
Yep. And the other one that, and I'm trying to look for it here, but the other one that he talks about that's interesting is he's his lamp. And I can't find where that's at right now, but there's all of these different things that God calls him, or that David calls God, which is interesting to again point. David realized it's all about God. It's not about me. It's all about God. And he uses all of these great terms to describe God, which, we talked about from the very beginning. Our introductory podcast about the Psalms, how that it's this relationship between God and the psalmist. And you really do, you pointed out the I, me, and my. All of those are connections to the psalmist, in this case David, and his relationship with God. And it wasn't, as was so often the case with other military leaders, right there in the very middle almost. You light my lamp, the Lord illuminates my darkness. God's the one that does that. But so many of these military leaders, so many of the kings would say, look at what I've done, look at what I've conquered, look at what I've built, and David's, what, the only thing special about me is my God and what he has done through me. And I particularly like the rock one, because that's kind of literally the foundation for it all. Why is it that he's my fortress and he's my deliverer and because he's the one thing in a world full of all kinds of chaos that I can always count on. You send your giants, but my rock is greater than what you've got. It's all about God.
Yeah. Yeah. I missed that one, that stronghold there. He's also my
And the other
stronghold.
thing that you'll notice that he repeats is, again, the terminology for God. So 18 times in this psalm, he mentions the Lord, Yahweh. Now, it's, 50 verses. Mm-hmm. So basically, every other verse, he's mentioning the Lord. And then 10 more times, he's mentioning God. So you put it together, 28 times, that's Elohim. 28 times in 50 verses, he's mentioning God. 9 times he uses this word for salvation or save that you've already mentioned at the beginning and the end, but 9 different times he uses it in this psalm. And then 6 times he mentions the word enemies. So what's this psalm about? The Lord God saves me from my enemies. And he's praising him. It's all about God. He's the one that did this, not me.
Yeah, and like we read last week in Psalm 3, again, he's being surrounded again. I mean, look at what he says here in verse 4. He says, the cords of death encompassed me, and the torrents of ungodliness terrified me. The cords of Sheol surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called upon the Lord. I cried to my God for help. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry for help before him came into his ears. Then the earth shook and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains were trembling and were shaken because he was angry. Smoke went up out of his nostrils, and fire from his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed down he bowed the heavens also, and came down with thick darkness under his feet. He rode upon a cherub and flew, and he sped upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his hiding place. His canopy around him, darkness of waters, this thick clouds of skies. He says, from the brightness before him passed his thick clouds, hailstones and coal fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice, hailstones and coal fire. He sent out his arrows and scattered them, and lightning flashes in abundance and rooted them. Then the channels of water appeared, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils. As he calls upon God in his moments of need, as he's in all of these battles with, again, we're laying context here. This is crazy stuff going on in 2 Samuel 21. We have the sons of Gath that are coming out of him, these huge human beings who, whenever you're talking about the 6 fingers and 6 toes, I think about how much more grip does a person have with an extra finger on a sword or a shield or a spear? Because the spears that they have, it's crazy how they're discussed, how much they weigh, how big they are, how long they are. And for a man to be able to handle those, weapons is just simply amazing. But as David, the story of David shows us over and over again, no matter how big, how powerful the enemy is, God is always bigger and more powerful than they are. And so his continuous focus is on the power of God. And in all of these, where did I start reading? In verse 3 down through, we read through verse, 15 or so. There's nothing that compares to the power and the might of God. And when his anger is kindled, there is so many amazing things that he does and can do. And so, he goes on and says in verse 16, he sent from on high. He took me, he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. He brought me forth also into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. So again, going back to that whole, David doesn't see himself as defeating these enemies. He sees himself as lower than them and less strong than them, but his reliance on God is what really, God delighted in me, God rescued me, God's my shield, God's my fortress, God's my salvation. Complete reliance.
Yep. And the way that I would break this psalm down, verses 1 through 3 is all about God saves, which you've already pointed out. We'll come back to that idea in just a minute. Verses 4 through 6 is about God hears, which, again, you think about the fact that when I'm in these hard times or difficult times, and you've already read it, but all of these things are upon me, and in my distress I call to the Lord, and he didn't have to, but he does. God hears. 7 through 19, God rescues. Whenever there's problems and it's cataclysmic, the earth shaking and, all of this, but God is the one that rescues. 20 through 30, God purifies. Okay, so he starts talking about the reason why that he's in a right relationship with God is because he is the one who's righteous. Well, the reason why I'm righteous is because of what God has done. God is the one that's really pure, and God is the one who has lit the path for me and has helped me get to where I need to be. 31 through 45, God provides everything that he needed in all of this. God is the one that provides the support that he needed, the protection that he needed. God provided everything that he needed. And then 46 through 50, God saves, which I have the same title for because, as you've already pointed out, it's repeating the same terms and ideas in the first few verses, the first 3 verses, at the beginning that he is at the end. So that it does bookend it, that God saves. But in between all that, God hears, God rescues, God purifies, God provides. And if you noticed the way that I did all those points, all of them begin with God because that's what it's all about for David, is it's all about God.
Well, it makes sense because that's exactly what David's doing. God is doing this, and we can't miss the power of that because that's where he starts out. I love you, O Lord, my strength. So God's everything. Everything that I am is because of God. So now the Lord is. Well, that applies to every single one of these. My rock, if you're marking these as you're going along with us, you cannot miss these little 2-letter words here. My rock, my fortress, my deliverer, my God, my rock, my shield, my salvation, my stronghold. And now after he goes from all the my's, now he goes to all the me's. Here's what he's done for me. and there's what other people have done through me. So it really is amazing the reliance that he has on God, and how many, and we'll probably say this, I don't know, throughout the entirety of the season, but how much do we as people try to rely on ourselves through our problems, when what we should truly be doing is putting all of my faith in the fact that God can take care of what's going on. I just need to stay with him.
That's right. That's right.
And here, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, well, you go ahead. I just lost it. I'll come back to it.
I'm sorry. If you can go back to 2 Samuel, kind of, again, putting this psalm in the context of his life, if you go back up to 2 Samuel and look back up into chapter 21, in particular, verses 15 and 16, there's this idea that from a human perspective, it looks like David doesn't have a chance. There was a war. David went down with the servants, and David grew weary. Well, guess who doesn't grow weary?
Yeah.
God doesn't. And then he talks about, again, this description of his deal. Well, then there's this psalm, again, him explaining that I didn't get a victory because of me. I got a victory because of God. Then you go down to, context flows both ways. So you go down to chapter 23 of 2 Samuel, and here's the last words of David. The oracle of David, the son of Jesse, the oracle of the man who was raised on high, the anointed of the God of Jacob, the sweet psalmist of Israel. Here's what he says. The Spirit of the Lord speaks by me. His word is on my tongue. The God of Israel has spoken. The rock of Israel. He's not just my rock. 3 times he said it in that psalm.
Yeah.
He's not just my rock. He's everybody's rock who turns to him. When one rules justly over men, ruling in the fear of the Lord, he dawns on them like the morning light and the sun shining forth on a cloudless morning, like rain, and makes grass to sprout from there. So why has my reign been considered the golden age of Israel? Not because I was a great king, but because of God.
Yeah.
Nor, for does not my house stand so with God? He's made with me an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and secure. For when I he calls to prosper, and all my help and my desire, but worthless men are like thorns that are driven away. They cannot be taken from the hand, the man who touches them. So again, he's just pointing out what he did in this psalm, that it's all about God. And the success that I've had has been because I put my trust in him to rule. The last words he's speaking, you can imagine him on his deathbed. Who would have been beside that deathbed? Surely his son Solomon. And he's trying to remind him that, and you see more of this later on, but here in 2 Samuel's account of this, that if you want to be a great king, then you've got to realize it's all about God. If you want to be a great minister, you got to realize it's all about God. If you want to be a great daddy, I want my boys to look at me for the answers, but I need to point them to God, because it's all about whatever it is. If you really want true greatness, you have to realize that only comes when we allow God to work in and through us, and whatever successes we have, it's because of him.
Yeah, I actually have written in my Bible. I got it from somebody. And it was, I may pull it out, but I wrote down something close to this, that don't ever try to be the great preacher. Don't ever try to be the great father. Don't ever try to be the great deacon or the great elder. Be a man of God. Because if you will be a man of God, you'll be a great preacher. You'll be a great elder. You'll be a great deacon. And that's really the essence of it. And, while you were talking about how God is this to everybody, if we go back to chapter 18 and verse 30, I've got this highlighted in my Bible I thought was really interesting. Verse 30, as for God, his way is blameless. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a shield to all those who take refuge in him. For who is our God but the Lord, and who is our rock except... Now, here's what is awesome. But our God. He spends a lot of time talking about me and in this personal relationship. But I'm just going to do that. But then he comes to verse 31, and now it's no longer about me and but this is for all of us. He is a shield to all who take refuge in him. Not just David, but to all who take refuge in him. For who is God but the Lord, and who is a rock except our God? The God who girds me with strength and makes my way blameless. He makes my feet like hinds feet and sets me upon the high places. He trains my hand. And he keeps going back into all the things that God is to him. And now it's, it's more of a description before. Here's my relationship. Now, no, this is for everybody. Now let's go ahead and explain everything else that he's done for me and everything else that he is to me. But he's not just this to me, he's this to us. And so as God pursues his enemies, this is something he'll do for everybody. And so while it's very personal, it's very inclusive of all those who will, put their faith in him.
Yeah, and how would they describe God so often? He's the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob.
Yep.
But guess what? He's the God of Corey and the God of Garrett and the God of anybody who's willing to. And part of the problem was, like when you get to John, Jesus is having the discussion with all of them, and they considered themselves to be righteous, not because God was their God, but because they were descendants of Abraham. Yeah. They were making their connection to God through Abraham. David's saying here, it's not through any man. It's you, God wants a relationship with each and every one of us, with you and with me. And that's possible when we put our trust in him and follow his will.
Well, that's the same thing in the book of Romans is the Jews are hanging their hat on the Abrahamic promise, and what they should have been really looking for was the fulfillment of the Abrahamic promise, which was in all of the redemptive work of Christ. And so they were looking back at Abraham, and Paul's saying, well, let's look at Abraham. Abraham did things by faith. He wasn't doing things by the letter of the law. He was putting all of his trust in God, and God's the one who delivered him to where he needed to go. And now we have fulfilled everything, which was always meant to bring, has always meant to bring a saving plan, the plan of redemption, not just for you, but for everybody. And so the fulfillment of that came through you as a Jew, and now is there for the Gentile as well. And so now we all have this wonderful opportunity, because we've all sinned, to all have salvation and, freedom, or have the opportunity to be saved from our sins, saved from the wrath of God as the, result of that fulfillment. So, that promise back to Abraham connects to everything, and David's a huge part of that. He's a huge part of that. And, if you look back, and I'm doing more study on this because I find it interesting. What nobody really likes to read through, which is the genealogy of Jesus. But if you will go through and do as much as you can of a study on each of those people, you'll find a number of things about them. Some of them, obviously we start with Abraham in one, and we start with Adam on another, looking at Matthew 1 or Luke chapter 3. But the question is, were all of those people Jew? No. Were all of those people faithful? Were all of those people good people? Were all of those, were there people outside of the nation of Israel? I mean, when you really begin to look at that, God is going to fulfill his plan no matter what you do. And God is going to remain faithful to you no matter whether you are faithful to him. So to put your complete reliance, or put your complete trust, as David did, as we look back up in really all throughout this psalm, but especially in verse 1, understanding God as all of this to us. Well, did Jesus not do the same thing? I mean, when we're looking through a place like Isaiah 53 and the example of that in 1 Peter 2, and of course the actual story of that within the Gospels, that he entrusted himself to God. Well, did Jesus not think the same way as David?
Mm-hmm.
Did Paul, for instance, not think the same way as David? So these are signs or beliefs, understandings of what the blessed man, because we're sticking with our theme of what the blessed man understands about God.
Yeah, and one more thing, if you can go back to 2 Samuel 23, just one last reminder of all of that. When you look down at 2 Samuel 23, after those last few words of David, then starting in verse 8, excuse me, he starts listing David's mighty men. Mm. And just in case you might be at the point of, David won all those battles and David did all these great things because he had these mighty men and he was a mighty leader and yada, yada. If you jump down to verse 39, one of those mighty men, at the very last words of 2 Samuel, Uriah the Hittite. We're almost at the end of the book, and there's this, when you think of Uriah, what's the first thing that pops in your head? Bathsheba.
Yeah.
And lust, and adultery, and conspiracy, and murder. And there's this one last reminder of all of the things that David has done. David's great, David's awesome, look at what David's done. Well, what David's done is David's a man who has sinned.
Yeah.
And Peter kind of brings that up in that Pentecost sermon in Acts 2. Great a man as David was, when he died, he's in the ground.
Yep.
But there is a tomb that's empty, and that's Jesus. And again, it's all about God. And it's one more reminder that, the Lord is merciful and gracious and slow to anger. And, he's one that will forgive sin. He's the rock and the Savior and the deliverer. Again, the Psalms, they're thinking of a physical sense. But on this side of the cross, we realize even more so that it's all about God. No matter, going back to Romans, no matter what I do, what I've earned is death.
Yeah.
It's all about God and what he can do when I allow him to, and I put my faith and trust in Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderfully said. And, I don't know that we can push that message enough, that God is everything, sustainer of life. He is, when you look back at Israel is such a great example for us to look at of what to be and what not to be. And when we think about what the not to be kind of thing, whenever we're getting into, 1 and 2 Samuel, when Saul enters into the picture, or even, really when Saul enters into the picture, he is a perfect picture of what the people wanted to be. They wanted a king that looked like the idols of everyone else, and Saul was a good-looking dude. They wanted an army like everyone else. They wanted a kingdom like everyone else. They wanted a situation like everyone else. So in doing that, they rejected God so that they could be like everyone else. And that didn't work out too well for them. Saul did not work out. So now God chooses David, who is now the anointed, the son, and it's almost like there's this great there's a great comparison and contrast between these two men. Here's what you want, which is Saul. Here's what I want, which is David. And God's choice of David was, I know this guy is a man. I know he's going to mess up. I know he's going to sin. I know he's not perfect, but his heart will seek me. Mm-hmm. That's the blessed man.
Yep. And can I point out one more thing and then I'll hush?
Absolutely.
Turn on the screen there back to 2 Samuel chapter 22 and verse 1. Now this is the next to the last chapter in 2 Samuel. David spoke the words of this song to the Lord the day he delivered him from the hands of his enemies, and he's praising God. He spoke the words of this song to the Lord. Now, flip back to 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 1. Hannah prayed and said, my heart exults in the Lord, my horn is exalted in the Lord, my mouth speaks boldly against his enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. First and 2 Samuel is 1 and 2 Samuel in our Bibles. In the Hebrew Bible, it's Samuel. And the book of Samuel begins with singing words of praise to the Lord for his victory in giving a son. And it ends with words spoken to the Lord. And what the whole book of Samuel is about is it's all about God. Yeah. We have this notion it's about Samuel, Saul, and David. And yes, those are the major players. Yeah. But the hero, like, I don't know about you, but I was raised on the what were they called? The little golden books. You remember those? Mm-hmm. And they would have these Bible hero books, and one would be about David, and one would be about Solomon, and one would be about Moses, and whatever. But in the book of Samuel, the hero is God. Yeah. And from the beginning to the end, they recognized and realized that, and that's what we need to recognize and realize too.
That's right. The Bible is filled with so many good things, and this is why it's important to spend time in the Psalms. I feel is that there are, you might be reading through a difficult time in someone's life. You may, there might be different names or different people or whatever in these Psalms. And so, if you're not studying and you're just picking it up and reading, you're like, well, this isn't about me. Well, no, it's not about you. However, when you start to dig in, even to a place like this where David is praising God for deliverance from these enormous, crazy, sons of Gath, the message is so clear that that message will bless you. The meanings of all that's being said, if you'll look at that, the Psalms will change your life, and it will change your relationship with God. And that's, it's such a beautiful thing to go through these. And, again, as we started out with in Psalm 1 and verse 2, these are not things that you just read through and, read in big chunks. Take one psalm, take a few verses, take some of these sections that have been laid out here, read those and only think about them, meditate on them, chew on it, and figure out, all that it can do and bless, how it can bless you in your life. And I think that we'll all be surprised of how much we can grow in the Psalms if we'll do that.
Yeah. Remember him not only in the bad times, but remember him in the good times.
That's right. That's right. And I think that I think the bad times are what seem to stick out in our own minds. But even though we probably have a lot more good times than bad times, but if we'll remember God in all those times, I think that there is a great steady pattern that we can develop, because I know religion is full of of highs and lows. And so I believe that this is me, but I believe that the more centered we can be with God and our relationship, I'm never going to get too high and I'm never going to get too low. So that means that I'm not going to fall down and I'm not going to give up. If I can just maintain that steady line of faithfulness in that relationship to build it strong, then, ultimately there will be lots of highs whenever we get to heaven. It's going to be a great eternity with our Lord. So,
yeah, ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough to keep me from getting to you, Lord.
I fell right into that. We haven't had one song. You haven't sung one song yet, and I have ruined that.
You ruined that.
Oh, man. And now it's going to start. So now it's going to be, we're going to have lots and lots of songs.
There really is lots of songs that if you think of them in a spiritual connotation, my wife just walked by my office door and looked at me with this look through the window. If you think of it from a spiritual context,
That's true. That's true. Well,
I think that's kind of what she did on Sister Act, so anyway.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we've certainly ended on a high note here.
We've ended on a note. I don't know about high, but...
Oh, man. Well, Corey, it's always good to do this every week with you and to be able to share in our study and just talk about and think of all these different Psalms that we're going through. And as we're trying to do for each week, we want to remind you or tell you the Psalm that we're going to be in, which next week is going to be Psalm 30. So if you want to check out Psalm 30, that's what we'll be looking at next week. And we hope that you'll be able to spend some time right here in Psalm 18 where we have been. Mark up your Bibles, make them a tool that will help to remind you and study and all of that, because these are excellent ways to grow and just really good. So we'll post a lot of this stuff. I'll put it in the show notes, even the breakdown of how Corey broke Psalm 18 down, so that you'll have that, plus all the books and everything, so you can check all that information out there. Well, we're so grateful for you tuning in with us, listening or viewing this, and we're just grateful for you as an audience, and we hope that everything that we're doing and talking about it will bless you and has blessed you in your spiritual walk with the Lord. And we hope that you will, if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast and like, share, and follow and all that good stuff. Help us to grow this in every way possible by telling your friends, family, and congregations about the Untied Podcast and the ExcelPod Network, which we are part of the family of podcasts there for Excel Still More Inc. You can head to the website excelstillmore.net and check out everything going on there with the work as a whole that Corey and I are both a part of. And so thank you for joining us today and for taking this journey with us as we're looking at the blessed man in the Psalms, as we're going through some of the Psalms of David throughout this season. And until next time, we hope that God will bless you in your daily walk with Him. Pray for your faithfulness and your trust in Him. And until next time, stay untied.